Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is Steel Curtain Network editor Dave Schofield coming at you. It's Tuesday night. It's almost 20 after 9, but where else would you rather be as a Steelers fan in the end of February? Yeah, there's not a lot happening. There's some happening. But with me as always, except when he's not, is my big brother Rich. Rich, how you doing tonight?
Peeking at pecans, peeking at pecans, peeking at pecans.
Oh. Sorry, that's the intro for the other show.
I know.
So, doing all right? You holding up?
Hanging in there. A little under the weather.
Okay. But
hanging in there.
And now for those of you that realize we're getting going a little bit later tonight, the what's happening is Rich had where he does the announcing for the school that he works at. It was the last one, right?
Last doubleheader. The women will host a Region 20 playoff game probably next week that I'll call. If the men are in the playoffs, they'll travel. So
Gotcha. So because of that, that's okay because I had a lot going on here. Now, for those of you, if you're ever just joining us or as you're trickling in, this is our family show on the network because this is just two brothers sitting around talking Steelers, talking football. Sometimes we get on some non-Steeler stuff, which we will do later. We have our special segment that we do in the off season. But Rich, I've got to tell you, I didn't tell you any of this beforehand. I have had an extremely interesting 24 hours, maybe a little bit longer than that, but it's been a trying time for me. So I'm trying to keep it together mentally, but which is always a trick for me anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pulling single dad duty this week because my wife is away for work. She hasn't been away overnight for work in probably about 15 years. But she is 14 years maybe. But she is this week, and she's never been away for an entire week. And that's fine because I'm used to, I do the cooking, I do the running around. She does a lot of the, sorting the clothes and everything else for everything. We double team stuff pretty well, but it's just me. And it's also nice that my daughter's old enough that she's a regular babysitter. And so therefore, if I have to run one kid someplace and she's home, she can be with the other, and it's all good stuff. But yesterday, I'm trying to get stuff together to get my son. I think I've mentioned this before. My oldest son, you know this. He does fencing. He's been fencing for almost a year, and he has fencing practice. Have to drive about 45 minutes to get him there. But I'm trying to get him to fencing practice, and I'm making a dinner right up your alley. I've got venison on the grill. It's going.
Nice.
I've got it all ready to go because I got to leave to get him there. And I'm like, I've got this. I'm like, my wife's not here. We've got this down. We're nailing this. And I ran upstairs to do something. I go down to flip the steaks because I got to go downstairs to where my grill is. And I step out there and there's no heat on my grill. I ran out of gas.
Ran out of gas. Yeah.
Ran out of gas because people were like, "Oh, you got a charcoal now." Because if you want to grill one hamburger, you don't fire up charcoal to grill one hamburger. Gas is just more convenient. I know for Jeff Hartman that's sacrilege, but honestly, that's the way I've been raised. That's what we were used to growing up, and it's good stuff. So I went to hook up the other tank, and guess what?
It was empty.
It was empty too. So I had to take my steak and go and throw it up on just put a pan on the oven and throw it in there, which is not nearly the same. It actually turned out really well. And then before we left, my one son tripped over a cord and completely sent my other son's plate flying everywhere. And It's just like, they're not working for it. But that's not what really got me flustered. What got me flustered is when I'm on the way home, no joke, I'm in West Virginia, driving through a very small portion of Virginia to get back into Maryland because I'm right around the Harper's Ferry area. People are familiar with that. And so I still had a good way to go home. And as soon as I come into Maryland, I get the red light of battery on my vehicle.
Nice.
What do you think that is?
Was it your only light?
It was my only light.
Alternator.
That's my alternator. I knew it right there. I'm like, The alternator's bad. We had a thing in college where we went to make a trip. The light came on like that on one of the vehicles, and the coach says, "Oh, let's chance it." We made it from Frostburg to Harrisonburg, Virginia, but we didn't make it all the way to VMI, which was where we were going. So then that was it. But I'm like, so I knew it was the alternator. I'm like, I'm not stopping. I'm not checking anything. Can I get home? And the answer was I could not.
Nice.
It's the only time I've ever taken our main vehicle to take my son to fencing. I've always taken the other one, but my wife has that one. So my wife's gone, no vehicle, no alternative, everything. I've got both Jefferson Bartholomew Hartman and Brian Anthony Davis. Sorry, it's Jefferson Bartholomew because Jeffrey Michael was boring. Offering to help me out. I just ended up getting a tow truck, get it towed to the shop. But today was one of those on edge days because I had no car. I managed to get my son to school because luckily, he goes to a private school. But luckily, my neighbor 2 houses up goes to the same school. I was able to get a ride there to get him and get him back. I didn't hear from the shop until 20 minutes before they close that my vehicle is okay. And I'm like, how am I going to get there? Luckily, Brian Anthony Davis came to my rescue. He was actually not too far from my house. He was out running some errands and got to see Big Bad. I shouldn't call him Big Bad. That's right now. Got to see Brian today. He hooked me up. So thank you, Brian, so much. Got that all taken care of. Come home, go to take my son to archery practice. Yeah, first he's fencing, then he's archery. It's like medieval, baby. And guess what happens?
The light comes on again.
No, I stopped by the mailbox and now I have jury duty.
Nice. Hey, it wouldn't happen to be in U.S. District Court in Baltimore for the month of April, would it?
No, it's not. It isn't.
Darn, I thought maybe we could carpool.
Yeah, we could carpool. No, it's for those of you. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago with jury duty?
Last week.
That was last week. So yeah, to top it all off, now I've got jury duty. First, I thought it was April Fool's because it's on April 1st. Is when I'm gotta go, but at least it's here in town. With that, so it's just been kind of one of those days. But yeah, is there very much Steelers stuff to talk about, like news wise?
That's what I was sitting here trying to think, and I'm like, no, there hasn't been a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think when was the Mason Cole? That was since our last show, right?
Was it or was it the same day?
That was Friday.
Is that Friday? Yeah, because we talked Chooks.
Yes,
and that was.
Yeah. So Mason Cole, once again, it's another one of those that not surprised that it happened, was surprised when it happened. So yeah, because the Cole news was new because that was Friday. The salary cap going up much more than everyone anticipated was Friday.
Yep.
That was like more than $12 million more than what was projected. So that was pretty cool. So then you had the Mason Cole thing that saved some cap money. Then there was another thing that was a little bit more under the radar. I didn't even realize it until it was either really late Friday night or Saturday morning when I check in on salary cap stuff, that Over the Cap had made another adjustment to the Steelers. I'm like, well, what was the adjustment? Oh, that's what it was. I saw it and it just skipped my mind. And that was the PPE came out.
Yeah.
That's the proven performance escalator. For those of you that don't know what that is, I had the article out there on Saturday. And it was all about Dan Moore Jr. If you're a second through seventh round draft pick and you play a large amount of snaps or make a Pro Bowl on the first ballot, meaning not an alternate, in your first 3 years, you have the opportunity to get an increased salary for your fourth year because it's proven performance at escalator. So his I think it was 2.311 million, if I remember the number exactly.
I think you're correct.
That his salary went up. It went up to more than 3 million from what it was going to be. So you saved almost 4 million from Mason Cole after displacement, but then you lost over 2 million from Dan Moore, what they're going to have to pay him next year. And they're like, I know some Steelers fans are, well, could they, if they release him, does it hurt anything? No, that would just be money they would save. But it's not very often someone hits the proven performance escalator and then ends up being a casualty. It just that's not how I don't think that would look very good for the NFLPA, the way that works. So therefore, the exact amount of rollover into next year isn't known right now. I mean, there's some estimates, but I'm still kind of waiting for it. I'm not ready to nail down what I have the Steelers cap space to be for sure, but it's somewhere. I would estimate around $9.5 million that they're under right now. But we're going to talk about another one tonight that might drop that down even more. That'll definitely come up. We know that there likely will be some more cuts. But that's kind of what's going on with the Steelers. Omar Khan did not speak today at the combine. There was a death in the family. I didn't see that there was an announcement of exactly what it was. I don't have to know exactly what it was. Omar, family first, and the Steelers are going to be say the same thing. I'm sure they have people that can step up and cover things for Omar Khan. So with that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You know what? I haven't said this anywhere else. You know how I said about Mason Cole, that it happened wasn't surprising, but the timing of it was?
Yes.
Well, that's one of the weirdest things with Presley Harvin was the timing of it. Why do it now? Why wait? I had a theory behind that, another one that I hadn't heard, but yet I haven't seen anything happen with it. And that is, what might be good for one Presley Harvin? Maybe he should look to punt in the UFL this year. And if he's on an NFL roster, he can't.
Yep.
So, because that's where Brad Wing is right now.
Yeah.
So maybe that was a possibility of why they did it when they did. Say, hey, you're not going to be our guy going forward. You want us to go ahead and release you now so you could try to get with another team or even punt in the other league and work it out that way. So, Rich, before we jump into this topic, unless you have any other news that you want to talk about.
Nope. Jump away.
All right. Well, then we're going to go ahead and take a quick break before we start talking about wide receivers as we're jumping back and forth between offense and defense. We've already hit running backs. Last week was cornerbacks. So this week we're going wide receivers. So if you're with us here, YouTube, Facebook, X, we're not going anywhere. If you're with us on the audio, stick around. We'll be right back. All right, Steelers fans, let's dive into this. Now that I talked enough about my woes going on, wide receiver, something that's interesting, Rich. Do you have any idea how many wide receivers the Steelers have under contract right now?
I'm trying to remember. It's like 6 or 7, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if you're counting even the ones whose contract technically hasn't expired until the beginning of the league year, and but if you also count their futures contract, which to me kind of seems a little sketchy. Like, you can't count guys that aren't under contract until the beginning of the league year and count guys that are only under contract till the beginning of the league year. But honestly, that's what the Steelers do right now on their website. They have them both. But if you count both of those, they actually have 10. 10. And only one of them is set to be a free agent. So let's go ahead and mention that one because I wrote an article about this weekend, and that's Miles Boykin. I think Miles Boykin is really interesting because Miles Boykin gives you something in a fifth wide receiver that isn't all that easy to find. And that is real good quality and quantity of special teams play and then someone who could be your fifth wide receiver if you need it.
Right. And really fits that role.
Yeah.
Down the depth chart wide receiver.
Yeah.
He can go in, he can make a couple plays at receiver here and there and be a really good special team player.
Yeah, but the thing is with that you have to remember, if that's your role, like the DHB role, Darius Hayward-Bay from several years ago. I guess that's more than several now. I think it goes by too fast.
Quite a few
years ago. The thing with that role is if a wide receiver goes down and you bring somebody else up or something, they're probably getting passed on the game day depth chart. But is always that last option. You know, you can have somebody else who might have been inactive, otherwise active, or a practice squad elevation guy that might even then get more snaps than that fifth wide receiver if they're that special teams guy. And there's not a lot of those out there. And because of that, Miles Boykin was on a veteran salary benefit contract last year. I'd be fine if they bring him back for that.
Yeah. So
because you're like, well, wouldn't you want a better receiver in that role? You know what? You probably would. But how many times are you targeting your fifth wide receiver anyway? But I tell you what, if that's a guy that can run down and be a gunner on the punt team and on the kickoff team, that's a key role.
Yep.
So that's one. It's because last week this is the whole reason I wrote this article. So last week with the preview, we went through the we went through the entire our unrestricted free agent list, and we did stay or go. And we're like what we wanted versus what the Steelers wanted. So we'd be like, stay, go, you know, stay because we want him to stay, but go because we thought the Steelers were going to have him go and all that. I was surprised that both Jeff and Brian were wanting to move on from Miles Boykin. But yet they wanted to stick with James Pierre. And I'm like, the thing with your fourth cornerback, because I count Nickel as something separate on the depth chart. The thing with your fourth cornerback, no matter who it is, you're going to expect them to play special teams because that's a position that kind of role fits their skill set anyway. Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
More than likely. So to me, I'm like, yeah, you could say you like James Pierre for his special teams value, but he gave you next to nothing at cornerback last year.
But
my goodness,
your versatility of player is better off going with Boykin as the wide receiver.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's a lot harder to find that wide receiver that plays that much special teams versus that cornerback. And that's what I was bringing up there. Honestly, I'm okay however the Steelers do with those guys. Either one of them, it's all about you come to training camp, you still have to make the roster. But to the one wide receiver that's due to be an unrestricted free agent is Miles Boykin. Let me go ahead and list off the other guys. I'm gonna try to pull out the ones that are futures contract. First, you had Mark. I don't know if it's Marquez or Marquez, Callaway, Dez Fitzpatrick, who was someone that was with the Steelers all through training camp and on the practice squad all year, and even I'm pretty sure appeared in one game. This is Killian, I think it's Killian, but it's spelled really weird. Harris, Denzel Mims, that's one that people need to remember is there, and Deuce Watts. Those are the futures contract guys because they were either on the Steelers practice squad or someone else's practice squad that the Steelers signed a futures contract. Any names really jump out at you there that could maybe get into the mix? You're like, no.
You're to me there. You're talking about guys that would have to come in and impress at training camp to get in the mix.
I mean, I think that's he was their next option last year. So yeah,
correct.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have some guys who could get their name into the mix? Yes, and you probably have a few guys in there that are just bodies.
Yes, yeah, and honestly, I mean Denzel Mims, he comes with NFL experience. He was a second round pick of the Jets in 2020. I mean, he was drafted, what I think 10 picks. I'm looking at that. Yep, 10 picks after Chase Claypool. He was another one. He was one that some people thought that the Steelers might be in on at pick 49 that year. And he played 3 years for the Jets, and that was it. Then last year, partway through the year, he ended up with the Steelers practice squad. So that he could be interesting. But I don't know that the Steelers really have anything else there. So now we get to the other four. And it's very interesting because you've got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Calvin Austin III, Allen Robinson. I don't think we have to really question much between Pickens and Calvin Austin III. They're both going into their third season. They were second round, fourth round draft picks. They're going to be around. We kind of know what they are. And George Pickens is, over 1,000 yards last year. The bigger questions come at the other two. So let's go ahead and hit the not as big elephant in the room. Let's go Allen Robinson first. Do you see Allen Robinson being on the Steelers come OTAs?
Not at $10 million.
Not at, and just so you know, it's $10 million base salary.
Correct.
He's going to count almost $2 million in dead money regardless. I mean, that's a cap hit of almost $12 million, but you could save $10 million. And I'm trying to, I don't know exactly. There might be a bonus where part of it's a bonus in there or something. It was kind of weird when they redid it last year, but yeah, that's just one of those. That's just one of those things that you're like, you can't have that guy costing that much of your salary cap. So I'll ask you this. Do you think the Steelers just flat up release him? Or do you think there's any way that they redo something?
What wouldn't surprise me is the old release. Let's kind of wait a little bit and see. And then if nothing else goes on for Allen Robinson, hey, you want to come back?
See, and there you go. I didn't even give it to you as the option, and you picked the right answer. You picked the right answer. Now, would I be shocked if they said they did something else with his contract and they knocked that down big time? I would not be shocked. But I think the more likely thing is you're just going to release him and then see what happens if it comes back. So there, I think, he was the wide receiver 3 last year. So there's going to have to be something going on there that could be a different player in the mix. Now, before we get on to what they should do for next year in general, let's go to the other one, because Shannon White's been pounding for this in about every article when he wants to talk about stuff, meaning in the comments of the article, which is fine. I mean, it's no big deal. It's just, where he stands. And it's almost as bad as it was last year, where he was saying the same thing. Where Shannon really wants the Steelers to trade Deontay Johnson. What are your thoughts on the Steelers and Deontay Johnson going into next year, Rich?
I don't know, but honestly, I don't see them trading him.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. It's just, I don't know. If Omar Khan did something like that, I'd really have to see what he was doing, wheeling and dealing. And he'd have to have some sort of plan really together to do that. They're not going to do it just because they're like, yeah, maybe we should move on from Deontay Johnson. Well, they're not going to do that without a solid plan in place.
Yeah, I
And when I mean
completely
a
agree.
solid plan in place, I mean they have to figure out then if they're going to trade him, how do you trade Deontay Johnson and upgrade your wide receiver core? Because
Yeah,
that's what has to happen if you trade Deontay Johnson. You have to upgrade the room,
mhm.
which is why I don't think it's going to happen because I'm not sure how you trade Deontay Johnson and upgrade the wide receiver room.
Yeah. And though, for those of you wondering, he has a base salary. Well, it's a $7 million base salary. He's got a $3 million roster bonus that kicks in not long after the beginning of the league year. So in all, it's $10 million. You're like, oh, you can save $10 million. I'm like, is there another wide receiver out there for $10 million that would do more for you than Deontay Johnson?
Yeah, and see that's what I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, because the question is, how are you better? How is you're exactly right, because you said it, and it's what I've been saying. How are you better? Now, it's funny because I was when a couple years ago, I'm like, they're not trading Chase Claypool, is what I said, or Deontay Johnson before the season when that happened. I said they're not doing it before the season. I said they are not going into the next year with only one wide receiver that had caught any kind of passes, and George Pickens being a rookie. They're not doing that. They're not going in, and that was even talk of that before they drafted Pickens. I'm like, they're not going in with one wide receiver that caught any kind of passes for them the year before when they don't have to. If it's one thing if they're free agents and there's nothing you can do, but to choose to trade. Now, George Pickens coming onto the scene gave the Steelers the luxury of being able to grab an offer that they couldn't refuse for Chase Claypool because they found out they had an answer that you couldn't bank on going into the season. So that trade made sense at the time they made it. If they'd have made that trade before the season started,
Oh,
that would have been highly questionable.
yeah. Well, my other thought is this: is if there's no way that you could go into this season with a new offensive coordinator, and if the Steelers take the idea of hey, you know, if Kenny Pickett's still the quarterback, how do you downgrade the wide receivers? You can't do that because then all we would do is sit around and people that don't like that we make excuses for Kenny Pickett having to have Matt Canada as an offensive coordinator. Well, what do? Give him a new coordinator, but take away one of his most reliable receivers?
Yeah.
So there could it happen? Yes. Will it happen just to happen? No.
No. I mean, because here's another thing to consider.
It would take very special circumstances for it to happen.
And I also think it could, honestly, could it happen before the season, but not until training camp? That's a possibility because there's the whole, I've heard people throwing around out there. Is there the possibility that he's going to hold in again because he's in the last year of his contract? I think if he did, that would be really dumb.
At this point,
you know why that would be really dumb?
At this point in his career.
Yeah. Do you know why that would be really, really dumb? 10 million reasons why.
Yeah.
When he was doing that at the end of his rookie deal, it was the end of his rookie deal as a third-round draft pick. It wasn't at a $10 million base salary. There's a difference there.
Yes, there is.
If he doesn't see that, then he's crazy. But if he does do that, and there's a problem in that regard, I'm okay with the Steelers trading away a player because they're a problem. My goodness, they had to do it with Antonio Brown, but that one got very public, so that's why that ended up having to happen. But I want to bring up something else about Deontay Johnson, and a lot of people have said it. We've had a lot of people Steel Curtain Network write articles, everything else. The question is, and this is part of what Shan likes to say as well, Deontay Johnson doesn't fit in Arthur Smith's offense. You know what I have to say to that? Baloney.
Yeah, poppycock.
Nope.
Poppycock.
Don't buy that for a second. And you're like, what? Wait. But it's about running first and blocking wide receivers and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, here's my question that I can't get somebody to answer this. But probably because I'm assuming because there isn't an answer. When Arthur Smith was in Atlanta, when Arthur Smith was in Tennessee, did he have a Deontay Johnson-like receiver? You're like, oh, well, he had A.J. Brown. That's your George Pickens-like receiver. Oh, he had Drake London. That's your George Pickens-like receiver, in my opinion. So my thing, they're like, oh, does he really have a great, getting open receiver, do this stuff Deontay Johnson has? Maybe you think that he doesn't have that wide receiver doesn't fit in his system because he's never had one to utilize. Because people want to say all the time, well, a good coordinator, they've got to use the pieces they have. Arthur Smith now has a Deontay Johnson. Let's see what he's going to do with it. That's why I call baloney on that. Okay. Here, Mr. Woodside said this. I'm going to bring it up because I never thought about this. We said Calvin Ridley did okay, and he's slight. Like I couldn't tell you for sure. Like I said, wide receivers on offense and secondary on defense. That's the furthest from my wheelhouse as you can get with that. So I will understand that. But that's my thing. Is
and place kicking. Oh, no,
I did coach place kickers.
Sorry, I had to throw that
you're
out
saying
there.
that's as far from my wheelhouse. You mean doing it, but I mean, I actually did coach place kickers. Punting, no. I mean, place kicking and punting, not the same thing. Punting, no, that's good. That's not good either. Returning, yeah, that's farthest from my wheelhouse in special teams. But that's what I'd say about Deontay Johnson. You say, oh, well, he's got to go because he's not the right fit. I don't buy that at all. Because if you have a wide receiver like Deontay Johnson, you make him fit.
As fans, that's not our call, even if we think it's true. It's not our call.
So I'm not a fan of people wanting to move on from Deontay Johnson. I'm not shocked if he gets an extension. I'm not shocked if they play out the last year of his contract. I'm more shocked if he tries to hold in. And in that case, I think he's burning his bridges. But to me, if Deontay Johnson gets traded, it has more of an issue to do with off the field than it would be on the field, in my opinion. And I'm not saying there's off the field that should cause him to be traded. I'm saying if that ends up happening, that's why I think it would happen. And as far as and from the knowledge that I have right now, I don't think that's happening.
Right.
So, yeah. So that's what I'd say about it. So, I mean, think about that. You've got Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. You got 1-2. You've got Calvin Austin. Let's bring him up for a little bit before we'll finish off with Pickens. Wasn't overly utilized this past year. I mean, it was almost like whenever he was in, you knew it was kind of a gimmick play. If you look at his stats,
Matt Canada and his creativity, man.
Yeah, like you say, it's not creative if everyone knows it's coming. Oh no, you said it's not a trick play.
Not a trick play. Not a trick play.
I mean,
if it doesn't.
Calvin Austin averaged for the regular season 1 reception a game. He played in 17 games and had 17 receptions. He had 180 yards. He had a receiving touchdown. He had a rushing touchdown. He had 11 rushes for 57 yards. Now, he also had a touchdown in the postseason. Got to remember that. So, to me, yes, what Calvin Austin had last year was a quote-unquote rookie season without the babying along of a rookie.
Yep.
Because he had his baby along period while he was out on IR. That his acclimation period, his making sure he can handle the length of a season. He wasn't going straight from bowl game, training, combine, pro day, all that stuff where they say there's basically no off season for the rookies when they come in because of everything they have to do once they finish up their season. He had the injury that he was rehabbing and everything else. So it's not like it was easy, but he didn't have the wear and tear of a game to worry about. So to me, they didn't have to baby him along, but it was still his first year. So I want to see him be implemented more next year. I don't know if he's ready to quote unquote be the number 3, if you know what I'm saying. Especially when the Steelers are running, if they run 11 personnel.
But he
Now,
has to
don't
be.
know that they'll run a lot of 11 personnel.
But he has to be the third.
Yeah.
He has to be the third.
Because he's Calvin Austin.
The third.
The third.
The third.
So, yeah. And now, anything else with Calvin Austin? And he's the punt returner, so, he's going to go.
Right.
Okay. George Pickens. Is he your wide receiver that you are evolving your passing game around going into next year?
See, I don't like the idea of evolving your passing game around one person. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, the Steelers don't do that. I mean, gee whiz, even look back at the 70s dynasty. It wasn't built around Swan. You had Swan Stallworth. Mm-hmm. You had tight ends that could catch the ball. You had, it was, swinging out to the running backs. It was a complete passing game. And I want the Steelers to do the same.
Because now when did they do that? When did the Steelers revolve their passing game around one person?
A little stint there in the 80s. It was around Lewis Lips.
Yeah. And the most recent would be
AB.
That would be around AB. Even when you had Juju, it was all around AB, and then using the other pieces to complement what he was doing because of how defenses were reacting to him.
Right.
So, yeah. So right now we'll come back to the wide receivers for our final question. Go ahead.
I like the idea of Deontay and Pickens as the two-headed beast. It's you want to take away this one? Ha ha, watch this.
Exactly.
Oh, you want to take away this one? Ha ha, watch this.
And when you really say, oh, okay, you're going to do that? Well, we got some tight ends that can catch too.
Yeah. So
now I didn't bring this up in the news section because I don't know if you saw where I put it in the Slack channel today for SCN that the Atlanta Falcons released tight end Jonnu Smith, which people talk about. That's Arthur Smith's favorite player because he was with Tennessee and then he was with Atlanta. And they're like, so of course already, Field Yates and others are already saying, oh, Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that eventually when we talk about tight ends. We're not talking about tight ends.
Yeah, we're not talking about
but I just think that's funny. But I do see the Steelers, maybe using more of their tight ends this year. I wouldn't mind seeing Freiermuth moving out into the slot a good bit. When it comes to their passing game and utilizing that where you don't know where the guy's going to line up. So we'll have to see how that works out. Anything you want to say in summation for the wide receivers?
No, I expect real quick. I will say I expect to see some things there. Wouldn't surprise me, if the Steelers were to release Allen Robinson. I wouldn't be surprised they went out in free agency, picked up another free agent wide receiver somewhere. Not somebody. Everybody talks about some of the big names out there. No, not one of those guys. A guy that's more of a number 3.
Yeah, and trust me, when we get to the end of the show, we're going to be talking about number 3. I think most people know where we're going to go. But you got to look. But I think you're right. That's what you're looking to do if you're going to look in free agency at all. You're not looking to someone to replace Deontay Johnson or George Pickens unless they decide they're going to trade Deontay Johnson, which you already talked about. We don't think that's a wise move for them to do. If they go out and land a big wide receiver, the next thing you know, maybe you start talking about that again. But I don't think that's their plan. I really don't.
Yeah.
I also want to bring up one other thing. I wrote this article. Man, it was in the offseason, but it was a while ago. People talk about the Steelers and their drafting of wide receivers. Since 2010, when they got both Emmanuel Sanders and AB, it's not a knock it out of the park as much as people think. but it is pretty good for drafting.
Yes.
Because think about it. When you draft, I mean, the draft is really, if you can get half your draft class to pan out decently, that's a good draft. So if the Steelers are getting half their wide receivers to pan out, that's really good. But there's some people that think if it's a wide receiver and the Steelers draft them at any point in the draft, it means that they're going to be it's going to be a home run. Not necessarily the case. We've seen some strikeouts as well.
Lima Sweet. Oh,
yeah, yeah. So I just went through name by name, and honestly, it was. I mean, I hold on just a second. I'm trying to see if I can find where I had it because they all kind of fit in the same kind of category. And Lima Sweet was actually before 2010, so he wasn't even one.
Oh, I know,
but really completely counted towards that. But it was weird because they all kind of fit into categories. Man, I got this whole. That's the problem with having a huge notebook to do everything. Then when you kind of want to look at stuff, it's so hard to find it, and it takes a long time with everything. So, of course, right now I can't find it. But it was really strange how it might have even been before the season was done that I did that article because I had to. But to fill some, but it was really weird how they kind of paired off a little bit with everything. You had very similar groupings of wide receivers with things because of like how they even kind of panned out. Like Martavis Bryant and Chase Claypool were kind of in the same category.
Yeah.
They were around. They were pretty good at the very beginning, but they didn't even last their rookie deal with the Steelers.
Yep.
So, and they had a lot of those. I did find it in there and what some of the stuff I was doing with that. So that's just pretty interesting because I know some people are like, oh, Steelers got 2 fourth-round draft picks. Just draft a wide receiver there, and you're going to have a great player there. Not necessarily. Okay. Not necessarily. It's funny because like Pittsburgh Toddy says, Coach was nice before he mangled his hands. Coach was nice in one game. And that was the game he mangled his hands.
Yeah.
I was at that game. Tammy Coates had 2 career touchdowns. They were both in that game. And what's sad is he dropped at least one more, maybe even 2 other ones. They were playing the Jets. They were wearing the Bumblebees. I was there. So, yeah. So that was, you look at a James Washington. He was drafted really high. Didn't pan out. Wasn't even with the team at the end of the year. Jerry Cherrybrand brings up, Marcus Wheaton. So it's one of those things.
I thought maybe he meant Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
Oh.
Sorry. So there you go. So it's interesting. Now, I'll ask you this before we move on. Do you think the Steelers could go wide receiver in the draft this year?
Yeah, they could pick one.
I'd be surprised if they didn't. I think it would be later. I mean, I don't know that it really depends on what they do in free agency. But they didn't draft one last year. Now they drafted 2 the year before, so it made sense not to draft one last year. To go 2 years in a row for the Steelers not draft a wide receiver, that doesn't. I'd have to go back and find my page again. That's not one that they do very often. So, just how it goes. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to have our little bit of non-Steelers talk, and then we'll finish up with our big questions. So stick around. We'll be right back. All right, Steelers fans, let's get rolling with this. Rich, it's that time of the show. I know I kind of gave some non-Steelers talk at the beginning. Just kind of complaining about but that was all to tie back into the whole jury duty thing, which I just thought kind of was icing on the cake for the story. But and if you didn't know what I was referring to, you got to go back.
They have it out for the Scho Bros right now.
They have it out for the Scho Bros. Yep. You know what? They must like the way we interpret things and that we keep it real.
Yeah.
Maybe that's maybe they're watching the show and say, you know what? Those guys, they'll look at it how it is. maybe they're the guys to have on your jury. So I threw the question out there. It's not that we don't have any or any other ideas. I know you said you could have done something. I just threw it out there again just to have an idea of what people would say. This is one that I might have a follow-up question with it, but it came from, I'm pretty sure it was Steeler Chick 46 said, and I can't go all the way back to see it, and I didn't save it. So I might be rephrasing it. What's your go-to tailgate food? We're going food this time. Okay.
Okay.
Your go-to tailgate food. Now I'm going to kind of change it out. I'm going to say party.
It was Steeler Chick 46.
Yep.
So you had that right. So
all right. I thought I had the person right. But it could just be, party food because like even when we go to Steelers game, it's not like we tailgate.
No.
Or anything like that. So
I mean, if you're getting us and our truly tailgate food for Steeler games, it's Uncle Dave's pepperoni rolls.
Great answer that I never thought of. Because what do? I make us pepperoni rolls when we go to games. I don't buy lunch at the stadium. You can carry them in a clear bag.
Yep.
You can carry in a bag of chips if it's still factory sealed. You can carry in a soda if it's factory sealed. I don't know if they look at it that intently, and that's probably how people sneak other stuff in. But yeah, when we're at Steeler games, we eat pepperoni rolls. So, and you have to call them Uncle Dave's pepperoni rolls because I make triple digit of them for our family vacation.
And Dave,
Kyle requests some anytime he can.
He took Kyle a whole bunch when he was down there for a basketball game a few weeks ago, and because of that, I think you are his favorite uncle. So, my wife,
hey,
Renee talks.
You get that is through the stomach, man. You got to target the stomach.
Well, Renee talks about you and Kyle, and your relationship and how Kyle loves your pepperoni rolls, and you guys like to play golf and like to golf together and those things. And she thinks that you two have a very interesting dynamic. So, but I mean, for us, if we're going to the games, it's the pepperoni rolls.
It's pepperoni rolls. The game,
and Dave, I don't like to give you credit everywhere, but you make some killer pepperoni rolls. You really do.
I've made so many of them because when I was teaching high school, I was an advisor for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and we would make them for a fundraiser. And there was times where we would in a day make over 1,000 pepperoni rolls, and that's just what we do. I just kind of got it down. And it's funny, I could even tell everyone the exact stuff that I used to make it, and it just like what our mother says. She's like, I try to make it like you would say stuff. It's just the same.
I was waiting. There it is. Kathy wants to know.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Explain, because
where do they originate?
They originate from West Virginia.
Specifically, I'm fairly certain from Fairmont, West Virginia.
I believe so, but that area of West Virginia.
No, that's the word. That's the West Virginia word. Okay, which is south of Morgantown. It is pepperoni wrapped in dough. Now, that's all it has to be a pepperoni roll. But for me, it's got to have the cheese.
Yeah.
So when I make them, it's pepperoni, mozzarella cheese, wrapped in dough, and baked.
That's it.
They didn't even know what they were in my area. We had to educate people what they were in order to sell them. Now you can go in and find them at Walmart, right when you walk in the door.
Well, you say that. Just before we moved back here, Dave, there was a kid that when I was at William Mary that worked as an RA, was not in my area, was in somebody else's area. But I got to talk with him and found out he was from Brewston Mills.
Oh yeah.
And they were doing a night where it was in his building where it was, bring a special food from your area. He took pepperoni rolls.
Yeah.
Nobody had heard of them.
Yeah. And then, of course, everyone wanted to call them pizza rolls. I'm like, they're not pizza rolls. Pizza rolls would have sauce in them. They do not have sauce. They do not have sauce.
And so the more story about that is that they originated for for they were big for coal
Miners, because there was a non-perishable lunch item.
non-perishable lunch item. Yep, that they could carry into the mine.
Yep, and George Rice says, "I live in Fairmont. You are correct. Every store makes them fresh. I've had them some various places. Oh, one time I was at West Virginia Wesleyan, so that was in Buchanan. They had it with ground pepperoni in it.
Ooh,
that was interesting, very different.
I've
delicious.
I've had it with the chopped, with the little cubed.
Yep,
of the pepperoni.
I've had that too.
That's pretty good.
This was like ground. Yeah.
No, you know me for fresh. For fresh pepperoni roll, it's tough to beat the Swanton Mall.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Which the Swanton Mall that's a tiny little town here that has a little general store in it, and they make them fresh, and they're so good.
And they are
so
good there. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up pepperoni rolls. So we got to talk about them for a while. I was going to say,
Kathy asked another question. This is a good one, real quick. What kind of cheese? Mozzarella is the best.
Mozzarella is the best.
Do you make the dough or use tube dough? I use frozen bread. Frozen bread.
Frozen bread.
Loaves of frozen bread. Now,
I'll be honest with you.
You divide them up.
One loaf of frozen bread makes 6 pepperoni rolls.
Yep.
So, if you want a dozen, it's 2 loaves.
Yep. And I'll tell you what. And these
are
not small pepperoni rolls either. We're talking, Dave.
Because you got to let them rise. That's the key. Yep. You got to have them rise. And I mean, I don't mind putting it out there what I do. I use sandwich pepperoni. But the key is with sandwich pepperoni, it just has a little bit more flavor to it, in my opinion. But I also cut the sandwich pepperoni in half. You don't want your pepperoni too thin, but if it's too thick, then it pushes into the dough and they can bust open and everything. It's not as easy to roll. So I cut it in half. I think I use 5 halves in a roll. And then mozzarella cheese, I get a pound block of mozzarella cheese. That actually makes for me 24 pepperoni rolls. I cut it into quarters, and each quarter makes 6. I just cut it into strips, and there you go. Roll it up. There you are. I don't even mind putting that out there. So that's my tailgate recipe. My other thing that I'm saying, if I'm eating at a quote unquote, if I'm eating at a tailgate party, meaning if you're not having to travel and take it there, my wing dip is the one I always like. I like wings. I like wing dip. I like buffalo. I don't like it. I like it with some kick to it that it can clear your sinuses. I don't like it so hot that you're wondering if you've melted away the inside layer of your mouth. And honestly, here's the last question, Rich. Do you do wings? You go with wings? I didn't start eating wings till later. Yeah. Is it ranch or is it blue cheese?
Well, with my wing, I don't eat either with wings. I eat ranch on a lot of. It would be ranch.
Yeah, it's ranch for me.
But I actually don't care to do ranch on wings typically.
Yeah. So the harder the wing, the more likely I am to dip it in ranch.
Real quick, I will give you what my go-to tailgate party item has been. It's been a little over a year now, and I take it everywhere now. And I just finished some last week. Smoked venison queso dip.
Really? You've told me about it.
Yeah,
I think I've yet to have it.
No, I think I'll make some for us on vacation this year. I'm going to bring down a pound.
There you go. I thought you were going to say deer jerky, because I grab your. That's what you need to have for the football games. If I'm bringing pepperoni roll, you got to make sure you have the deer jerky next time.
I've had the deer jerky when we've gone before. Not every time, but I've had it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one time we sat in your seats and I had deer jerky.
You know what? I remember that. I've never had it in my bag that I've carried in. That's why I was thinking. All right. Okay. And as John S. says, I love it.
Yes.
Calories don't count when watching football. Yeah. So good question. I'm glad you brought up pepperoni rolls. I never would have gone there. Great one. Let's bring it back to wrap it up, Rich. And we know the question that's coming. I've already kind of hinted at it for everyone. So wait till I type it in there after we each answer. We've kind of decided that we don't see Deontay Johnson being traded. George Pickens is George Pickens. Allen Robinson just costs too much. And he was wide receiver 3. Now, it doesn't mean that he couldn't come back. That's a possibility. But the wide receiver 3 for the Steelers this coming year, is it going to be somebody currently with the team? Is it going to be somebody from the outside, meaning free agent or trade? Or do you think it's going to be that the Steelers are going to try to take one high enough in the draft that they're going to be that guy to fill in? So it's current on the team, free agent, or draft.
Okay. I'm ready to answer this.
Yep.
I have nothing behind this other than it is just my gut feeling.
Okay.
And as people should know, between you and me, we have pretty large guts. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to go with not currently on the team.
Okay. So from the outside.
Yes.
Not most draft. Likely free agent. Trade could also be in there if you say free
Correct.
agent. Okay.
Yes.
Honestly, I'm going that route as well. And I'm not counting Allen Robinson as a free agent. I'm not counting Miles Boykin as a free agent. I don't think Miles Boykin would be up to wide receiver 3 anyway. I mean, he could come back as wide receiver 5 and play more just because he blocks. But to me, I'm talking about that third guy with receptions. The only question that would make me doubt that would be if Calvin Austin breaks out.
Yes,
and
breaks out
and
becomes Calvin Austin the third, becomes the third.
The third. Yes, which could happen. But for now, I'm saying the most likely is going to be through free agency. So I'm now, did it send? There, it's sent.
Yep.
So I've got that out there. Where do you think the Steelers' third wide receiver for 2024 is coming from? And we've already got it. We already got it. Here we go. After forward says outside, meaning free agent or trade. George Rice says free agent. Jen, okay, how am I going to mess this up? Is it Atal? With the 2 L's, is it Spanish or is it the L's?
Italia.
I'll just say Italia. I was going to say Atia. It was Spanish, but that was probably off. Says draft. There you go. John S. says free agent. Gabriel Golden says free agent. John Walter also says it would be free agent. Kathy says it's currently on team because she is going to be CA3. Okay, Steel Dog 88 says free agent. Steel Trick 46 says free agent. I'm starting now to lead. Maybe I should have gone currently on the team to say I think Calvin Austin can do it. But even if he does, I think there's going to be a free agent that would come in and it would be between the two of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there'll be some kind of free agent wide receiver brought in. George OTJ says free agent. Ted Jones says draft. It could go that route. Okay. Wow. I'm bringing it up because they said hi. Paranormal in the Funhouse says, hey, I made it. How's everyone? You don't always get, some people don't always make it to the live chat. You got Rob Fittoff says free agent. Ruben Stone says on the team. Gavin Anthony says draft. And Jeffrey Benedict. How's it going? I miss Jeffrey. I miss Vertex. I miss Jeffrey.
I know. I missed your guys' Vertex. You and Jeffrey's Vertex is one of my favorite articles.
I know. I miss Jeffrey.
I don't think I ever missed one. We miss you, Jeffrey.
Okay. Yeah, he says free agent. He says new wide receiver coach will get a vet he knows. Good point. That is a good point. Okay. Here's another one that I miss. I miss Marky D. I miss hearing the blokes on there all the time. I miss communicating with Marky D the most. But we still communicate.
The touch.
Yep.
Down under.
Undrafted free agent from the practice squad. All three. There you go, Marky. Let's see. Russ is talking about pepperoni rolls. Gotta love it, Russ. Yes. Where am I? Okay, Retro Rivers says free agent signing. Sherry Richards goes specific. Free agent from Cincinnati. So that would be one Mr. Boyd. Is where she's looking at there. Paranormal in the Funhouse says free agent. Yeah, I mean, especially if they're going to pay Higgins by franchising him. I didn't realize. I mean, if both guys were free agents, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yep. More people are missing Jeffrey. That's right. World Traveler 70 says free agent. Jeffrey misses it too. Come on, Jeffrey, come back to me. I know, I understand. Family first. Family first. There we go. Wouldn't be Marky D if he doesn't say bungle suck. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's all of them that we see so far. I'll be honest with you all. Sometimes I miss the very last chats at the end of the show. I feel bad. That's because I got to get ready to hit the music and all that other good stuff. But every time I'm like, Rich, you know what? We'll be able. We'll cut this show down. It won't be as long. Nope.
And every week we go.
Maybe it's because I told too long of a story at the beginning, but it is what it is. But it's a good fun time.
Dave,
yeah,
you were long-winded.
No way. Who would have thought? Well, I was trying to save your voice for you since you were under the weather and everything. So, but hey, programming note. I'm going to be honest with you. Thursday night Steelers preview. It's going to be either 5:30 or 8:30. It's going to be one of the two. It's our last basketball game of the season. So therefore, either we got to try to get it. Last week, I thought Jeff was falling asleep when we were that late. So I know for Jeff, that's really tough. So you got to be ready for that either way. Just trying to let you guys know that. That's one. Number two, I'm going to have a different background next week. As long as I still have good connection, I'm going to be away with the fam, heading south. If anyone's going to be in the Myrtle Beach area next week, first full week of March, hit me up. Let me know because I'll be around there. That's going to be lots of fun. Getting some. After my wife was away for a conference for a week, she's like, I need away from work. So that's where we're going. We're going to be there. I should still be there for this show. Unless they changed the internet at where I stayed before, but it hadn't been a problem as well. And we'll have our regular shows coming. There is the Steel City Insider. There is one tomorrow. I know that we have that. That was after a week off there. Plenty of other stuff. Hey, got another one, another podcast channel that I want to promote. It's a Steelers one, but it's with FFSN. And it's Black and Gold Blueprint. And it's Roy Countryman. And you've heard Roy on Let's Ride with Jeff with Monday Morning Conversations before. He's now got his own channel. I might even be making an appearance there sometime with Roy. I think he does a couple shows a week. Make sure you can check that out. That's part of the Fans First Sports Network as well. And, of course, check out SteelCurtainNetwork.com. We're having some really good discussions. I don't know if it's because I've been mentioned on the podcast, but we're getting, comments are picking up with some pretty good discussions there. Great, cordial, though, just a really good Steelers environment, much like our live chats. So, Rich, what would you like to say?
They're made up of football fans, not trolls.
Not trolls.
Not people looking for reactions. People in there wanting to truly talk Steeler football. And, that's what our live chats tend to be. People that really, truly want to talk Steeler football. Now, it's easier for us in the live chats when we get the trolls because we just, time out. Yep. But, stick with us, as we're here into the off season. As I say, our off season kind of goes through sections. We're in that lull right now between, the Super Bowl and the start of the league year.
You got the combine for those that like it. Are you a combine guy?
No. I don't go out of my way to watch it, but what I tend to do is get over on social media and pick up where other people have spent time on. Like, I don't spend tons of time on the combine, but I will go and read reports or see.
I want to know who's ascending and descending.
Somebody will intrigue. I'll hear something intriguing about a player and then go just watch their workout. That kind of thing. But I'm not. Same here. I am not Andrew Wilbar going to the combine and taking it all in and everything. Everybody, not quite.
He does a great job.
He does fantastic. I loved a couple of his live. He did a couple live streams from there last year, and that was pretty cool. So we're going to have stuff slowly going on. Stick with us. as I say, Dave will tell you here, he and I, we kind of come up with our whole off-season programming. We're in the process of that now, talking about position groups. And I'm sure, I know a lot of the other shows have some of those types of things as well. They figure out ways to make the shows continue to work and be interesting and informative during the off season. Because right now, guess what? I know everybody out there in the live chat, everybody's out there listening to this on podcast form. Y'all miss Steeler football already. I know I do.
Sure do.
All of us at the network do. We all miss it. But the thing is, right now, the fun, or to me, and being a Steeler fan, is we're going to all miss Steeler football. But we have the opportunity with some of these things to miss Steeler football together. Once we're, and then, before long, we keep progressing through, and the next thing you know, we're going to be right back into Steeler football. Yep. Can't wait.
Can't wait.